Marketing your nonprofit organization is the topic today here on the Business Wrap. Joined in studio by a panel of experts, and they are.
I'm Cindy Kangas. I am the Director of Development and Community Relations at the Capital Area Humane Society.
And I'm Todd Ross, Manager of Communications at the Michigan Osteopathic Association.
And I'm Paul Schmidt, Creative Video Strategist for UnoDeuce Multimedia.
Paul, let's keep it with you.
All right. Now, we've talked about why should we market. We've talked about who we should reach. Talked about success stories. Well, let's get into the nuts and bolts of, okay, these are the things we need to get out. How do we get those out there? And so there's a multitude. There's more platforms out there for, it's insane how many platforms there are today as opposed to what it was even just like 10 or 15 years ago. So, Cindy, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd like to say first that no matter what you do, and usually people use more than one method of marketing, it has to be consistent. Everything has to look the same. So whatever you're doing on social media needs to be put on your website or sent through direct mail as well. So how about if we just tackle kind of the older school forms first? Maybe the direct mail, which is another thing that nonprofits still use, and it's very successful for them. Have you done anything with direct mail before, Paul?
Have I done anything with direct?
Yeah.
That's kind of out of my
Not
wheelhouse.
so much.
Mine's
it is
more
a little
like
old
people
school,
moving.
but it's successful. Sometimes people just like having something in their hands, and I think especially an older generation, they're used to receiving those things in the mail anyway. They want to write their little check and send it in. It's kind of, they want to get their little labels that come along with it. They love that stuff, and so it's still prevalent. It's still something that we use quite frequently.
And I don't think you can let that go. I think you're, like Cindy says, they're looking for something tangible they can have in their hands. And if you're doing some of the other channels, it can reinforce what you're doing. If like Cindy says, you're consistent in your message, it looks the same, then getting that piece in the mail actually can reinforce what they might have seen in a boosted Facebook. It could be anything.
I was going to say, now usually when we send a direct mail, we follow up with an email blast, same messaging. So there are a lot of, constant contacts and,
MailChimps.
Yeah, MailChimps in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So more and more people you're seeing are learning how to use those platforms. They're actually pretty user-friendly once you kind of get the hang of it. But that's another thing that you want, if you have a large demographic of people that you have email addresses for, that's probably the next smartest choice to make is an email.
And I think that's one of the big tasks is tracking those. So when you have a direct mail list, that the post office penalize, they don't like it when you're going to bad zip codes. So you always want to make sure that you're keeping that list up to date. There's lots of different software that you can put through there to make sure if a street is changed to a circle, you can do that. The same thing with your email message. You have to keep up on that. When you mentioned a couple different ones, and they all have very similar applications, but you want to make sure that you're checking your bounces. When you send that out, how many are bouncing? Take those out of the list. That's going to raise your open rate, and you're getting to the right people. Plus, if you're really paying attention, you can see some trends. What types of email addresses are going away. Yeah. I know with my group, I have a very old school group, so I have Earthlink and AOL addresses, and some companies you didn't think existed anymore. But I see that they're hanging in there, and I see they're not bouncing back, so that they're opening up our message.
Well, you have to put some time and thought into when you send them. Are you going to send them, every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. and letting your people know that they can look forward to it at a certain time? A lot of times people send their email messages kind of sporadically, and so people never know when they're coming, and they go just to their junk mail. But if you're teaching, your people, hey, I'm going to send you this once a month on a Tuesday morning at 10, then they look for it. Most of these platforms have Google Analytics built right in. So not only can you check the things that he was chatting about, but clicks. You can see if they're clicking to go to your website or if they're clicking, your social media boxes right on that email, which is pretty fantastic.
And Cindy brings that up. One of the things that we like to do is make sure there's a unique URL. So I can see it on both sides. I can see if they click through. I can see if they registered for the event. I mean, it's very powerful how far you can drill into that. But by setting up that unique URL, so you go to a landing page that was only listed on that e-newsletter you sent out, you can start to see how many people came from that newsletter, what your response was.
I have one question about the bounce rate and all that stuff. What software do you use to keep track of that type of, other than the email client itself? What do you use to make sure that all your contacts information is up to date?
Well, for our group, we use Constant Contact. I think that there are a lot of other groups or a lot of other applications you could use that have the same power. But we also have another piece of software. We have an overall. I'm tracking their home address. I'm tracking if they've married, single, things like that.
Oh, wow.
So I have redundancy there, and then actually I export everything out into a file I can keep just as an Excel file.
And as for my end, you guys mentioned being consistent, have a consistent message, consistent look, consistent, all that stuff. That's one of the things that when we produce videos for nonprofits, for events and such, we make sure that we sit down with the person and like, we need your color palette, we need your fonts, we need all this stuff that makes sure that when we create something, it's going alongside that messaging. So with that, let's move into, I'm sorry, Todd.
No, I want to bring up one thing. In working with nonprofits, a lot of times when you put your branding together, you're relying on friendly people that are going to help you out, maybe at a discounted rate, maybe someone donate. Get those assets. Those assets are yours. I don't know how many times I've talked to a group where their logo is a JPEG file on a Word document somewhere. So you want it as a package that you have in from business card to billboard. You can hand it off to someone and they know your color values.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the social media platforms that are out there. Maybe, we mentioned direct mail, which is still important, but let's talk about, the social aspect, because that's probably where you're going to spend a lot of your time. So what platforms have been effective and what do you guys do the most?
Okay. We do Facebook the most. We have a post every 2 hours beginning at 9 in the morning, and it goes till 9 at night now. And we're kind of training everybody to know that, at 9 a.m., maybe it's the, adoption story, and at 11 a.m., maybe it's who's going to PetSmart later that day. We've kind of got it all down to a science as to what time we're posting what things. But as that's grown and we've added maybe some live streams and that sort of thing, we've put some of the video onto YouTube. So YouTube is also something that we're just kind of starting that's pretty successful. And Instagram has been pretty successful for us just because we have a lot of young camp kids that like to look at Instagram. We have a lot of youthful staff that like to use Instagram. So we've used that and we're seeing some success with that as well.
So we're a little different. Again, we don't get puppies, which is kind of an unfair advantage. But
we're doing puppies.
We're less visual, and so I'm gonna talk. I have the same platform Cindy mentioned, but I'm big on Twitter. And for Twitter, we get issues raised in community health issues where we've learned to tag other groups. We've learned to put hashtags in that bring people to our site when they're looking for, say, the opioid issue. We have hashtags that we've developed and used over and over, and we see other groups using them. So I think that for us, when you're less visual and you can't do compelling Instagram, I can have a compelling message in Twitter and make it more episodic. We're not going to put posts as frequently as the Catholic Humane Society, but we're not as compelling. But we keep a content calendar where I know I'm going to put certain things out there, and then when timely issues come up, they bump those off and we post those.
Cindy, why are you so down on Twitter, it sounds like to me?
We have a Twitter account, but as he was saying, we're very visual. So people want to see pictures of our pets, and they want to see videos of our pets, and the others have just been more successful for us. We do have a Twitter, but it's not as active.
Not as robust,
yes,
I guess, as
right.
the others.
That's right.
Do you think that's more due to the audience you're trying to reach?
Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And same with you, Todd. Twitter works better for you because of the audience that it is, or
I think in overall for our membership, I'm going to find more people with Facebook because it has just a little bit older demographic. But Twitter it's a different group, but they're more inclined to be active. They're more inclined to jump onto issues that we're working on, and it gets more attention because we have legislative advocacy as one of our missions. So we get more attention that way, and it also lets people know this is what we're doing. Twitter has a little bit more of a political bent to it, and I think that helps us.
So going into this, what do you guys do to make sure you obviously have a handle on your audience? How do you truly measure success using these different platforms?
Well, before we switch over, we didn't mention like the news media, radio, TV commercials, billboards, maybe buying an ad in a newspaper. A lot of those things aren't quite as popular for people to use, but still a lot of nonprofits do tend to do that. They try to get on and do interviews with people, but they're also asked all the time, do you want to buy a radio commercial? Do you want to buy a TV commercial? Do you want to do this or that? And so it's just one more aspect to marketing that people always have to consider.
And we're currently involved with a group called the Parent Information Network, and we've launched a campaign called I Vaccinate. It's ivaccinate.org. It's a pro-vaccination group. And we've done media buys with that group on out-of-home billboard stuff, radio, TV, Pandora. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to escape, but what it does is it reinforces that message over and over on all these different. So I'll see it on Pandora. When I go to look for news items, I'll see it. And then I remember driving down south, and I was in Louisville, Kentucky, or I'm sorry, that was a different issue. That was I was in a remote part of Michigan, and there's a billboard for it showing the same artwork, the same branding that they have on everywhere else.
I think this form of media is trickier because it's changing. A lot of people are watching Netflix instead of watching traditional television. A lot of people are listening to, their own MP3 players, or they're listening to Pandora instead of traditional radio. So people have to make these decisions. How am I going to market if I'm using these mediums? It can be kind of tricky. Same with newspaper. A lot of these things are online now. So do I do some sort of online ads? I think
that's a big challenge now. One of my mentors said, I waste half my advertising dollar. I just don't know which half. And I think it's even harder now to divide that up and say, where's my attention going to go?
Yeah, I found that, in conversations with folks about, the shift in where you're trying to put your budget where. And, and that's, when they said, like, I don't understand why this doesn't work or this doesn't work anymore, and it's about shifting that budget into something, using the same budget, but shifting it into the appropriate place where it's going to have a little bit more success, such as, maybe scaling back on regular media and then moving it into more where your audience is on social media, just using that same budget, but shifting those dollars. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so
pump the brakes a little bit. Radio is still the strongest medium.
I did not point out any broadcast medium. I'm just saying shifting tides.
But I think that, again, the budget used to be an annual conversation. I think it's got to be more frequent. I think that you have to be measuring and realigning on at least a quarterly basis.
Well, you have to make sure that everybody's story is straight as well, and that. And so, you mentioned something interesting, Cindy, about the Netflix generation. Everybody's on there, and they're not on, the regular stuff anymore. And so they're ingesting their media when they want to.
On their phones, on their devices, yes.
But, by mentioning Netflix, it's more of a visual medium. Have you guys seen, you mentioned doing live streams and videos and such, and how does that stack up against any other of your other posts or any of your other messaging?
Of course, if there's a video with a story, it's liked and shared more than anything else. It's huge. It's huge. People love that. It can't be too long, as we said before, but those short little videos, little vignettes are powerful.
So Cindy, do you track those shares and find out what's more shareable?
Yeah, we do. We always look at our shares and how many people are liking it and interacting. Not just that, they're posting something underneath. Maybe they're posting a picture of their own pet or something within the comments. It's huge.
And so, and that's one thing that we try to talk about as well, is the fact that videos do get a lot more
engagement,
traction.
Yeah.
And and videos are very versatile. They can be used in ways that you can use it at an event. You can also shorten it up, use it elsewhere. You can shorten it up again, use it in ads, or extract the audio and use it for Pandora, which we've done before as well. And so there's, it's a versatile medium because you're capturing video and audio. And if, so it's just interesting. So you're saving, money in the budget by being able to be very versatile with your medium.
Right.
And it continues to reinforce the brand. It's the same consistent message.
Awesome.
Paul, is there a basic number that somebody can take that's using video for whatever organization they have in terms of length? What are we looking for? What is successful in terms of a length of a video?
Personally, I really think the 60-second time frame is a real hit. It gauges people. Not only that, but it's pretty versatile across all platforms because some platforms have a time limit, such as Instagram, and I'm not sure if Twitter has the time limit anymore, but it was usually 60 seconds. And so you can also use that in Facebook ads, which have that limit as well. So that 60-second or less is really the sweet spot.
Unless you're live streaming, because it usually takes a few minutes for people to tune in when you're live streaming. So you want to be sure that you're going at least 3 or 4 minutes because that's when the audience starts picking up. So it's very different if that's your choice.
That's true. 5 minutes is usually max for that to stay on.
Solid sound advice here on the Business Wrap as we covered marketing your nonprofit organization. A big thank you to all of our experts today, and they were
Cindy Kangas from Capital Area Humane Society.
And Todd Ross, Manager of Communications for the Michigan Osteopathic Association.
And Paul Schmidt with UnoDeuce Multimedia.
My name is Tony Cuthbert. A big thank you to the producer of this program, Morgan Hall. And we close each show with our founder, Suzanne Ewart, and she says,
That's a wrap.